What is up today, Dallas Cowboys fans, Cowboy Nation across the world? The Dallas Cowboys are now in a perfect position to take everything that we wanted this entire season. Of course, at some point of this regular season, things were up and down. We're not really sure I guess you want to say the ceiling or the trajectory of this team exactly, but this past weekend, I'm going to say things played out perfectly. I hope you guys had a great Christmas holidays with the family, the friends, whatever else, and also a great new year because now it is 2024, so the Cowboys can focus their sights on something much bigger. Over the weekend, of course, like I just said, the Dallas Cowboys had some things fall into place. I want to say personally, going into this game against the Detroit Lions, I looked at the Cowboys as potentially kind of being locked into maybe that fifth seed, but at the same time, I was not solidified in that statement because, again, at the same time, you do know the Eagles have not looked like world beaters over these last few games anyway, so everything's still always up in the air, and we do know, as I always say, it's any given Sunday, it's any given specific matchup. If you're not coming out there ready, locked, and loaded, the other team, your opponent, can't take advantage of that, and we saw that happen in the Philadelphia Eagles and the Arizona Cardinals game. The previous 3-win Arizona Cardinals that we do know, of course, gave the Dallas Cowboys some trouble early on this season, but now with Kyler Murray back in the fold, we had a game where pretty much you saw that talent that Kyler Murray still has, and some of these other unsung, I guess you want to say heroes for the Arizona Cardinals against the Philadelphia Eagles, some guys that kind of have not been able to show themselves much this season for the Cardinals, were able to make some big plays. The Philadelphia Eagles do go down 35-31 to the Arizona Cardinals, ending on a Jalen Hurts interception on a Hail Mary. The Dallas Cowboys now have to do nothing but beat the Washington Commanders next week, and the Dallas Cowboys will lock up the NFC East, which is what we wanted this entire time, and also will have the 2 seed now owning that tiebreaker over the Detroit Lions. The San Francisco 49ers, obviously have that number 1 seed locked up again because they are a team that has, I guess you want to say, been the most consistent in the NFC overall over this entire tenure of the regular season. But the Dallas Cowboys once again had now in position to take some things and being able to make some noise because we do know, I don't know what exactly you want to say the specific reasoning is, but the Dallas Cowboys have shown themselves to be much better at home than on the road. And to me, that's not the end of the world because at the end of the day, it's about one specific matchup. If you're able to find yourself at home, on the road, in the postseason, whatever it is, it's just about executing your game plan and taking advantage of some of those matchup issues that you could potentially be able to create for the other team. So the Dallas Cowboys, I'm going to say now, I'm not going to say my confidence is peaked because, again, I do still see some issues that I want to talk about a little bit going forward, but for the Cowboys to still be in position to be able to knock off, hopefully, an NFC East opponent in the Washington Commanders and being able to take the number 2 seed in the entire NFC playoff seeding, and also being able to lock up the NFC East and having that division battle because we do know it's been up and down and kind of that 10-year, I guess you want to say that run of not having a repeat NFC East champion, I believe since 2001, 2004, that stretch where the Eagles, of course, the rest of the NFC East was I guess you want to say down to an extent, and the Philadelphia Eagles were able to kind of win that division. Andy Reid leaving that team a long time ago, but in recent history, the NFC East rarely ever has a repeat champion. Matter of fact, not rarely. Doesn't have a repeat champion at all. So the Dallas Cowboys are now able to kind of get themselves back in that mix if they take care of business. But like I said, there are a few things I want to talk about a little bit that I see some issues going forward. We can also get into this game against the Detroit Lions. Of course, we do know how it ended. You have some chaos and some turmoil over the officiating, some not really understanding of guys checked in, not checked in as offensive linemen for the Detroit Lions. Again, there's a lot to talk about, but the Dallas Cowboys, like I said, are now in position to be able to take control of some things that they want to do. Let's talk about it a little bit. Obviously, we do know coming into this game, Dak Prescott has been the name talked about, obviously, the most on this Cowboys offense. I guess you want to say the entirety of this regular season. But obviously, also, CeeDee Lamb has had such a great season. Now he's found himself in position to be able to take over some of these Michael Irvin receiving records that he's held up for a little while for the Dallas Cowboys. Now CeeDee Lamb sitting with 122 catches, I believe about 1,650 yards receiving on the season, and also 10 touchdowns, sitting in the top 3 in all 3 of those categories. CeeDee Lamb has shown himself to be an elite wide receiver one. We're not talking about just one of those guys that's kind of middle of the crowd. Of course, you do know the jokes. People that just don't want to give CeeDee Lamb the credit for the athlete and specific weapon that he is in the NFL. Of course, you get tired. He plays in a slot a little bit. He plays on the outside. CeeDee Lamb is a versatile player. I've never heard that ever be an issue. A guy that can be moved around and used in different ways to be able to threaten the defense. But for some reason, CeeDee Lamb was not getting that love. At the end of the day, we see exactly who CeeDee Lamb is. He is a playmaker. He is one of the best, I guess you want to say playmakers, but in general, just weapons in the entire NFL, and a guy that you have got to be reckoned with. Whether you're playing man defense, whether you're finding a zone, where you're playing, I guess you want to say mostly a zone defense, which we've seen against some of these teams that kind of weaponized against the Dallas Cowboys in recent weeks, talking about the Buffalo Bills, the Miami Dolphins. The Dallas Cowboys have a guy that can pretty much find these holes and these weaknesses whenever he chooses to. We obviously see in this game, Dak Prescott finds himself being, I guess you want to say, a bit of a magician on a specific play. A play that could have ended up in the end zone as a safety, but Dak Prescott finds himself out of that pocket and works his way down, lets the ball fly downfield. 92 yards later, CeeDee Lamb is in the end zone to start off the game. This is one of those games where I'm going to say, to me, it kind of shows some of the issues we had been having in the recent weeks, because again, not being able to take advantage of what CeeDee Lamb is. Go back to the Dolphins game a little bit. Obviously, we saw through the first quarter, I believe CeeDee Lamb had about 4 or 5 catches, about 93 yards and a touchdown. But then when you're looking at all the rest of the game, I guess you want to say that second, third quarter, CeeDee Lamb was not even targeted. And to me, that's where I feel the Dallas Cowboys hurt themselves the most when it comes to pulling out a win on the road, because you have got to use all your advantages when you're trying to pull off a road win, especially against some of the better teams. The postseason is coming up, and I'm going to hope that this coaching staff has kind of learned from some of those mistakes. But CeeDee Lamb is a guy that we can, I guess you want to say, completely strap our hoops to, because again, this is going to be a guy that we're going to be looking at for years to come. We do know when you wear that 88, you're going to always have the most eyes on you. Talking about from Drew Pearson to Michael Irvin to Dez Bryant. We don't have to get into Antonio Brown before then, but Dez Bryant to CeeDee Lamb, just that gateway for the wearing the number 80 out. You have got to be the number one weapon and playmaker on this offense, and CeeDee Lamb is exactly that. I'm excited for his future. I'm excited to see what he can continue to do for the remainder of this season, going into the postseason, because now, if you want to talk about being one of those guys, this is where CeeDee Lamb can really boost some of that stock. And we do know when contracts are coming up, and we do know money talks, but also so do results. So CeeDee Lamb is going to be able to put himself into position to get one of those big high money contracts, which he is I guess I want to say completely, is well deserved up to at this point. With CeeDee Lamb having 13 catches, 227 yards, a receiving touchdown, which should have been 2 if not for an unfortunate bad fumble by CeeDee Lamb into the end zone on a note, which again was going to be the second receiving touchdown of the night for him. Ends up being a touchback, and the Detroit Lions end up taking possession of the ball. And we also see, again, those are some of the situational issues that kind of, I guess, kept this game closer than it should have been, because there's a certain point in this game I felt the Dallas Cowboys should have been up by no less than 21-3, because again, we were showing that, I'm going to say you were showing some aggressiveness early on in the game, and the Detroit Lions were not able to keep up, but we were not able to finish these drives the way that we need to. And again, that's going to be some stuff that needs to get cleaned up going into the postseason. But obviously with CeeDee Lamb having such a big game, somebody had to be getting him the ball. Dak Prescott, 26 of 38, 345 yards passing, 2 touchdown passes. Again, should have been more on the game, but also 1 interception. Again, just the balls, pretty much, if you're watching the game, it was one of those balls Dak is trying to give his guy CeeDee Lamb an opportunity down the sideline. To me, it looked like just didn't get the ball out to the boundary, enough as he should have. Ends up being taken away. The Detroit Lions going the other way, but it did not take it. I guess you want to say it wasn't much of an issue, just because I will give a little bit more credit to a guy I've been poking at a little bit lately, Dan Quinn, because I guess you want to say at certain points of this season, we know what Dan Quinn has brought to the Dallas Cowboys as a defensive coordinator, but as a play caller in general, and a coach for some of these guys that just love to be around him. Obviously, Michael Parsons has the most love for a guy like that, but the opportunities he's giving guys like Marquise Bell, he's giving some of these guys like a Donovan Wilson, again, to be used just in different situations than what they probably could have thought would have, I guess you want to say, been in their sights prior to Dan Quinn taking over this defense. But going back to Dak Prescott, just an efficient game from him, and just having full control of this offense. That's, again, one of the biggest, I guess you want to say, positives that you could take from Dak Prescott in this game. We only put about 20 points. To me, like I said, it should have been more, but at the same time, Dak Prescott never felt like he lost. It never seemed to me, like it seemed like Dak Prescott ever lost control of this offense, even when we were having a few of our issues. We're going to have to figure out what exactly is going on with this O-line. Tyron Smith, I think, came back against this Detroit Lions team especially. But Tyron Smith found himself having a little bit of an issue with a guy like Hutchinson. Obviously, Aiden Hutchinson, we do know at certain points, you're going to have certain playmakers that are always going to give you some issues. But Tyron Smith dealing with back injuries, dealing with some of these, I guess you want to say, just kind of these lingering bumps that he's kind of dealt with over the last few years of his career, which to me personally, I hate to say it too much, but it's the, I guess you want to say, you have to live in reality at some point. It's time for the Dallas Cowboys to look into the future at the left tackle position. You cannot consistently just sit here and count on a guy that you don't know if he's going to be out there, not be out there. It is what it is. At a certain point, it's a business, but at the same time, you cannot be, I guess you want to say, big and valuable to the business as much as you should if you're not available. And that's what the Dallas Cowboys are going to have to solidify this offensive line. We do know we've seen some guys get in. Tyler Smith gets a little banged up in this game. TJ Bass comes in, doesn't play terribly, but again, we're just going to, I guess you want to say, we're still just kind of in that sense of who exactly are going to be your pieces going forward. Terrence Steele obviously just got a contract extension, a guy I have not been fond of this season because he has not played as powerful, I guess you want to say, in just showing that progression. Now, you can attribute some of it, to maybe some of those, I guess you want to say, the ACL injury, but at the end of the day, he's had a little bit of a time to work himself back into the mix, and it's not seeming like he's where he should be overall also. So the Dallas Cowboys are going to have to lock this offensive line down and figure out what exactly the weak links are. But Dak Prescott still being able to move around and use his legs when it calls for, that's one of the best things I'm going to say. We should be able to take it to the playoffs with us. Dak Prescott just being able to have that control of this offense, because we also can always say our running game has not been anything special. I believe Tony Pollard is sitting at about 900 plus yards, but it was not anything crazy. This last game, I think about 16 carries, 49 yards. Nothing to write home about again, once again. So, and again, one thing I will say, especially, you do know the running back room itself overall is having some issues when you see Deuce Vaughn getting more playing time than he has recently. And Rico Dowdle was a little banged up. He was not playing in this game. So that's why you saw Deuce Vaughn get a few more touches. But Tony Pollard, to me, at the same time, he is not going to be your prototypical running back one, your feature back. I feel like Tony Pollard is going to be at his best when he has somebody that can kind of take some of that pressure off him as well. And I'm not talking about just having another guy that's going to get 5-6 carries. I think Tony Pollard is going to be his best when he's able to stay in that 14 carry range, maybe 4, 5, 6 catches a game, but also have another guy that can come in and take about 10 to 12 carries, which I felt like Rico Dowdle has started to grow himself into a little bit. But we're going to have to get stronger in the running game going into the playoffs, because you cannot be one-dimensional. That's what the better teams are going to be playing. That's what the better coaches are going to be. So you're going to always have some issues if teams know they can take away one thing and pretty much create lots of issues and make you a one-dimensional team. The Dallas Cowboys, we've shown, I guess you want to say, at certain points we can run the ball situationally, but we're definitely a passing team at this juncture. Dak Prescott still leading the league in touchdown passes, I believe, with 32. Brock Purdy right behind him with 31. So we're going to see if he's able to kind of put some more on that going into this final game against the Commanders. But Dak Prescott, I will say, has been the glowing light on this, not even just the offense, I'm going to say this team, for pretty much the longevity of this regular season. So hopefully he can continue on that path that he has kind of created so far for himself, and hopefully we can continue to get guys like Brandon Cooks, CeeDee Lamb, obviously. More guys, I'm going to say hopefully. I want to see Jalen Tolbert become more of a little bit of a weapon going into the postseason, because we do know Jake Ferguson has obviously taken a step up for the Dallas Cowboys in his targets and just being a weapon for this offense as well. But over the last couple games, we haven't really heard much just loud noise out of Jake Ferguson as well. So we're going to still not say, I'm going to say right now, we're not even playing to the best of our abilities on the offensive side of the ball right now. But that's going to be a thing I guess we're going to be able to talk about a little bit, because we do have a postseason spot locked up, obviously, and potentially a 2 seed. So you're going to have to be able to find yourself in the mix of the Dallas Cowboys can actually be one of those teams that can make some noise, because if we're going to be able to say that we have a home game, at least one home game, the Dallas Cowboys are going to be able to kind of put some of these doubters, I guess, put them to bed, if that's the way you want to look at it. Obviously, I've given lots of love to CeeDee Lamb, referenced Jake Ferguson as a weapon. Jalen Tolbert, again, a guy that I believe could potentially get a few more targets going into the postseason. But Brandon Cooks, 5 catches, 60 yards, and a touchdown. I believe sitting on the season, he has about 48 catches, about 618 yards, 7 receiving touchdowns. A guy that's obviously, I think, going to be under contract with us for at least another year or so. So this is not going to be one of those seasons where you're looking at a one-and-done type situation. He's going to be able to continue to build that rapport with Dak Prescott. Brandon Cooks is going to be the X factor for this team in the postseason. That's what I'm going to say, and I'm going to stamp right now. Brandon Cooks is going to be the X factor because CeeDee Lamb is obviously going to get so much more attention. And we're going to see, especially the more he has these wild big number games, talking about CeeDee Lamb, defenses are obviously, maybe you're going to start to see that bracket coverage. We used to see Dez Bryant get a lot of times. Pretty much a guy over top and a guy locked in completely in man on him. So Dak Prescott is going to be able to continue to build with Brandon Cooks. And I think Brandon Cooks is going to be one of those guys. Do not be surprised if you see a 100-yard game or two for him in the postseason, because this is going to be, again, obviously an offense that's going to be based around our aggression and based around spreading the ball out, which we know Dak Prescott loves to do. That's probably the best thing you've seen from Dak Prescott this season. His ability to get multiple guys involved and not even just CeeDee Lamb, because we do know CeeDee Lamb is having the most gaudy season, obviously, at 122 catches. That's nothing to sneeze at. Obviously, I believe leading the league in catches right now. But other guys have gotten themselves involved, whether it's a guy like Jake Ferguson, whether it's a guy like Michael Gallup at certain points. You've seen Tony probably get the ball. I'm gonna hope that we're going to use this a little bit more going into the postseason. Utilize that screen game. If this run game is not going to be what we need it to be, we're going to have to utilize the quick pass game to some of these running backs in general as more of, I guess you want to say, a substitution for the run game. I spoke about that a little bit on Twitter when we're watching the game live. I'm thinking just use your run game. I guess you want to say an extension. Use the pass game as an extension of a run game, because we do know, we've seen teams do it before. We've seen the Tom Brady Patriots do it at certain points when they didn't have that solidified standard number one running back. They kind of used their offense, and I'm saying that quick game, passing game, I'm going to say, as more of a run game substitution. I feel like many teams can take some of that out of him. I believe Mike McCarthy has the mindset to do things like this, but he's going to have to actually put in the work. I have a few things to say about Mike McCarthy before this video is over with, but right now, again, I'm going to just say Brandon Cooks is a guy that we're going to want to continue to get the ball into and keep him as involved as possible. Whether it's in a screen game, whether it's in a quick slant game, because the number one thing I'm also going to say, you're watching Brandon Cooks, and it's one of those things, you watch him from afar, you watch him on other teams, and you're not able to actually just grasp how well he knows how to use his body. He's a small guy, obviously, in height and just size. But one thing you've seen that he has pretty much mastered at this point is being able to use his body and shield defenders off when it comes to bringing down these tough catches, especially end zone catches. So this is going to be, again, a spot for Brandon Cooks here for at least another year or so. So I feel like this is going to be a guy the Dallas Cowboys fans are going to continue to grow to love, because he is going to be one of those special players that might not be talked about first in the offense. I guess we talk about pass catchers on this team, but he's definitely going to be a guy to be reckoned with in the postseason. Obviously, coming to this game, we already know about the Detroit Lions' aggressiveness, especially from the head coach, Dan Campbell, former Dallas Cowboy. He has that aggression, I guess you want to say that aggression, and just that approach that he likes to, I guess you want to say, approach these games with, especially when you're playing against physical teams, or teams that are not as physical as you potentially, what you believe. The Detroit Lions have, of course, obviously, they have in their running back room, you're looking at David Montgomery, the former Chicago Bear, and rookie Jahmyr Gibbs. I believe they both combined for a little over 100 yards, but it was nothing crazy, which is what I was just happier to see, because obviously coming to this game, I'm having some issue and some worry about this run defense, because teams that start to take advantage of it in recent weeks, I'm going to say. Obviously, Dallas Cowboys did not put together, a bad defensive approach against the Miami Dolphins, but did not come up with that final stop. But one thing I've kind of gotten myself into issue when we're not pulling away offensively is that teams will continue to stick with the run game. I don't want to see guys being able to kind of just buckle down and beat us up in the trenches, because again, those are sometimes you're able to look at teams being able to, I guess you want to say, force you just in bad positions, because when you're starting to run and control time of possession, which I kind of was worried about the Detroit Lions doing coming into this game, obviously there are going to be some problems with that. I believe, let's see, I'm going to check it out to be specific. I believe David Montgomery, 14 carries for 65 yards and a touchdown. Jahmyr Gibbs, 15 carries, another 43 yards on the ground. So again, it wasn't anything spectacular, and to me, it wasn't anything that really brutalized us too much as well. So hopefully we're able to get a guy like Jonathan Hankins back real soon. We do know how important he is, but I'm gonna give a little bit of credit to guys like Osa Odigizua, but especially this guy. Obviously, he's not even one of our interior players, but we're talking about just, again, the guy has been a solid leader for this team for so long at this point. DeMarcus Tank Lawrence, a guy that plays so well. And of course, we want to talk about the numbers. You're looking at sacks, and you're looking at things like that, strip sacks. But guys like that are not necessarily, you can't watch them on paper when it comes just to the statistics. Because again, obviously, when you have guys like Micah Parsons out here, the weapons, the dangerous weapons like X Factor type players that Micah Parsons is, you're going to need some of those guys that just play under the radar but are very dominant in what they're asked to do. And DeMarcus Lawrence is nothing short of that. He's been making plays, especially in the run game. We can go back to last year many times, but especially this year, DeMarcus Lawrence, usually, if we're looking for a big stop in the run game, do not be surprised you see number 90 is usually somewhere involved in it. If we're able to continue to get Osa Odigizua some more work and just have him battle tested and being able to slide a guy like Jonathan Hankins right back into the mix, the Dallas Cowboys are going to be in a good position just to be somewhat solid at run defense. I'm not looking at us to be special, because at the end of the day, this team is what it is. We're talking about going to the last week of the regular season, week 18. The Dallas Cowboys are not going to become some shutdown run defense, but we just need to be able to stay in position and be able to slow teams down, especially if our offense is able to take advantage of the opponent's defense and being able to put some points on the board. That's going to obviously force them to throw the ball a little bit more, which the Dallas Cowboys, I guess you want to say, at certain points, I will say in this game, I feel like the Detroit Lions did not necessarily stick to the run game the way they should, and gave Jared Goff more opportunities to kind of throw the ball a little bit, and we saw him get into some trouble. Jordan Lewis makes a spectacular play on a screen pass, intercepts it, gives another possession to the Dallas Cowboys offense, and Jordan Lewis is a guy that deserves some credit because he's gotten some flack here, and obviously, like I've talked about so many times, the secondary has been moved around so many times. You're looking at the loss of Trayvon Diggs out of the blue, so that's forcing guys like DaRon Bland to play a little bit different than what they had previously expected. And then you're looking at Stephon Gilmore. Obviously, he's brought in to be that secondary piece opposite of the side of a Trayvon Diggs, and then having to be essentially moved into being that number one role, I'm going to say, because, again, we've looked at teams start to take advantage, and I guess you're trying to take some more shots at DaRon Bland recently. So when you're watching a guy like Stephon Gilmore just be able to still be a solid piece at his age, obviously he has the mindset for it. He has the mental aspect of the game down in the discipline. So it's just good to be able to see that. But guys like Jordan Lewis are starting to get some flack because now he's moved back into that nickel corner space, and he's had some bumps here and there. But I'm going to say, Jordan Lewis has not had a bad season by any stretch of the imagination. And this is personally probably his best game he's had. I believe this is the first interception he's also had since last year against the Detroit Lions as well. I believe week 7 they said it was. So you're going to see Jordan Lewis be obviously tested a little bit more in the postseason because teams are going to now be able to lock in. You're watching film. You're going to be game planning for one specific team, and it's going to be obviously much more intense than just a regular season game. So, but Jordan Lewis, if he can continue to just be somewhat solid, that's all I'm asking for. Just be solid and pick your spots to make some plays here and there, then the Dallas Cowboys is going to be just fine. But Jordan Lewis, like I said, just being able to still be finding himself, just bringing himself back to the top of the group, or to this one of those top pieces of this defensive secondary when he has had some doubters recently. It's a good sight to see. Weapons like Amon-Ra St. Brown, obviously sitting with more than 100 catches on the season, more than 1,300 yards receiving as well. I believe he has about 6 catches, 90 yards, and a touchdown. Sam Laporta, like about 7 catches, 84 yards and through the air, I'm going to say. And the speedster, Jameson Williams, the young guy for the Detroit Lions, I believe about 2 catches, 69 yards. It was just not a game, again, that obviously the Detroit Lions were hoping to probably get a better performance out of Jared Goff that he did not give. And I'm going to say this guy, to me personally, had the play of the game. I'm going to say a guy like Donovan Wilson makes a beautiful diving interception attempt on the ball, Jared Goff, late in the game, and comes up with it. And it was a big play because, again, now we're starting to see at a certain point. I'm watching this game as a Cowboys fan. Been here so long, at some point you can feel when the games are slipping away out of the Dallas Cowboys fingertips, and this was one of those moments. It was just big to see a guy be able to make a play. We do know Donovan Wilson is more that come down the field. I guess you want to say just bring his hat down on the field. We're talking on run, whether it's a run play or whatever it is. Donovan Wilson is your heat-seeking missile usually, but being able to show his ball cover skills, it was just a great sight. And also, when you're going to look at our opportunities for this, we're going to continue to talk about guys like Marquise Bell. You're going to continue to talk about guys like Jaron Kearse, who've been moved around a little bit due to some of these injuries. And I believe those guys were leading the team in tackles. I'm going to say, let's see, our first guy leading the team in tackles, Donovan Wilson with 11 tackles. I believe Jaron Kearse right behind him with 10. So our safeties are obviously being moved around and used more as linebacker pieces. So don't be, I'm going to say don't be surprised. Don't be surprised or don't be irritated by seeing that some of these secondary pieces are the guys leading the team in tackles, because again, it's just kind of the way Dan Quinn is employing some of these guys. Obviously, you know, Micah Parsons, I'm going to say it wasn't a flashy game or anything crazy like that, but I believe he has about 5 or 6 tackles, just say a couple tackles for loss. It was a nice, steady, consistent game. But when you're watching Micah Parsons, it's the pressure that he continues to put on the opposing team's quarterback. He had a couple nice hits on Jared Goff in this game, and that's going to be one of those things that you're going to continue to see grow, because at the end of the day, as the postseason ramps up, I'm going to say you're going to probably see Micah Parsons' intensity go up a level too. Well, of course, we can get into people talk about the podcast and the off the field thing, his opinions on sports in general, but especially the football. And some people think Micah Parsons is very friendly. He's talking about other teams. At the end of the day, I don't think any of that is ever an issue for Micah Parsons actually on the field. I feel like it's a thing about the fan base. We want guys locked in. I don't feel like Micah Parsons, that's ever been an issue for him. So let's continue to just let him be who he is and show also that he is that special player. The numbers are going to start to come. Because we do know, again, I also believe in the same sentiment. When sacks start to come, they come in just droves. So you're going to see Micah Parsons be able to get his. You're going to see guys like Dorrance Armstrong. You're going to see guys like Dante Fowler, who had a nice play in this game, a nice big tackle and on a run play early on in this game. Dante Fowler, again, some of these pieces, the Dallas Cowboys have employed some guys that are going to be weapons going forward. It's just about putting them all on the same, getting them all on the same page, and everybody aligned as well as they need to be with all these changes and movement going around. But the Dallas Cowboys, like I said, are in a nice space. It was a nice, solid defensive effort, I'm going to say. There were just some spots I had an issue with, and it was more so from the Dan Quinn approach. But defensively, the Dallas Cowboys started to round themselves, I guess you want to say round themselves into what we're going to need going into the postseason. Now that all the good stuff is out of the way, I don't want to rain on the parade, but at the end of the day, you're going to have everybody rolling accordingly, and that starts with your coaching staff. I have a couple issues with Dan Quinn and a couple issues I'm going to say with Mike McCarthy, especially because Mike McCarthy, you know, he has the dual responsibility of being the head coach and the offensive play caller. And when you choose, let's be clear, he chose this route because, again, at the same time, whether it's a guy like Kellen Moore that you don't agree necessarily with his approach, talking about Mike McCarthy as the head coach, but then you're bringing in a guy like Brian Schottenheimer who has some of your same ideologies and mindsets, and just I guess you want to say his approach to the game is very similar to yours in certain aspects. When you're doing that, you're going to have to be able to answer for some of the mistakes that you're making when it comes to game management. And we've seen, again, some of these ugly things show themselves, and Mike McCarthy is not looking, I guess to me, he's not looking good at all. I'm going to say keep it as simple and plain, because at the end of the day, it's about results. Some of these mistakes that Mike McCarthy is making in game management, and we can go back to what I'm talking about, the situation where you're looking at some of these plays, where you're looking at, I guess you want to say, a guy like in the Buffalo Bills game. Let's talk about the Donovan Wilson punch out, should have been a fumble and a fumble recovery. Mike McCarthy not taking the approach of throwing the challenge flag. The game was already slipping away at this point. You're looking for anything to boost up your team's mentality, the morale, get your guys back involved in the game, and Mike McCarthy not taking those opportunities. And again, I have no issue with Mike McCarthy being aggressive, I guess you want to say aggressive with the approach in game. We see many times we will go for it on fourth down. We will go for it on any short down yardage where Mike McCarthy feels like he has confidence in his offense, which I don't have a problem with. What I have a problem with is you not being able to use your mind and being able to know when to call timeouts and run clock. And that's one of those things we saw later on in this game. The Dallas Cowboys are starting to actually pull away, and I'm going to say pull away and taking control of the game. And what do? I believe the Detroit Lions had 1 or 2 timeouts left at this point. The 2-minute warning has just hit. And what do? We come out and throw the ball 3 straight times. Didn't even run any clock. Didn't force the Detroit Lions to use timeouts when they needed to. They should have gotten the ball back with very minimal time, if any at all. But the Dallas Cowboys, again, led by Mike McCarthy, were not able to use their brains. And again, just take the simple approach. It's not always about being aggressive. Well, we'd love to see Dak Prescott throw another touchdown pass right there. Of course. But at the end of the day, sometimes you have to play the odds and you have to play the smart route. Take the smart route, I guess you want to say, in the smart approach to closing out this game. Mike McCarthy, these are some of the things we saw some issues with over the last couple years. But he seemed to, I just want to say early on, after we got past this dry spell of the offense kind of being more conservative and before taking on this aggressive approach, you start to see people, of course, start to question, okay, well, Mike McCarthy, but he hasn't made these big mistakes so far yet. So that's what he was able to kind of hang his hat on. But over, I guess I want to say, over the last month or so, you starting to see some of these things pop out again, and that's gonna be something I'm gonna be very irritated if Mike McCarthy has one of these blunders going on in the playoffs, and it's gonna be one of those games. I guess you want to say those things. They kind of, whether it makes the Cowboys' ability to win the playoff game impossible, or it just makes it harder than it should be. I'm going to have a big issue, because at the end of the day, Mike McCarthy was brought here to win championships. You're not here to get to the playoffs. You're not here to just win the division. At the end of the day, when the postseason, I'm going to say, gets here, we're expecting you to be just as locked in as we're expecting these players to be. So Mike McCarthy has a whole lot of questions to start answering for himself. And again, I know me personally, I'm locked in. I'm watching his moves, because at the end of the day, if your head coach is one of the ones that's kind of putting us behind the gun in some of these issues that are very not even necessary, very unnecessary, I would say, Mike McCarthy's going to get a lot of blame. And at the end of the day, do not be surprised you start to see some fans flip on him once again. So Mike McCarthy better lock it in. He better get it under control, because at the end of the day, I feel like this team, I'm not going to say as if I feel like we're the Super Bowl favorites right now, but I feel like this team can get into the postseason and make some noise with the right matchups and just catch us on the right day with the right game plan. Then we'll be a good team. And I guess you want to say a team that other teams should actually be very cautious of playing. So, but Mike McCarthy, you cannot be the issue, because at the end of the day, everyone's going to let you know about it. We do know national media is already starting to get back on that train of what is Mike McCarthy doing. The fan base itself is starting to get there a little bit, but Mike McCarthy has the perfect opportunity to quiet everybody down. It's about results. I don't want to hear talking. I don't want to hear what we're going to do, how these guys are going to get better. You have got to actually do it, because as week 18 is approaching, the final game and the final week of the regular season for the entire league, you now have no more questions that you should be asking yourself. You should know what your team is at this point. You should know the strengths, the weaknesses, and the strengths and weaknesses of yourself as a coaching staff. So Mike McCarthy, lock it in, get better, continue to put those things behind you that we had issues with in the last couple of years, and it will be, I guess you want to say, I'm not going to say, well, like, I feel like like I said, I don't feel like we're Super Bowl favorites, the overall Super Bowl favorites at this point. Obviously, the 49ers are very much well in that mix. But as the Dallas Cowboys, we are a dangerous team. And if Mike McCarthy can get his hands, I guess you want to say, around his team, and is around just following the right approach and just keeping it smart and playing it smart sometimes, we're going to be okay. I said there were a couple things to, I guess I want to say I'm probably a little worried about when it comes to Dan Quinn, but I'll keep it down to just one. I'm going to say Dan Quinn right now, we do know he's turned this thing around. He's made this defense very reputable and a defense to actually be reckoned with. And players, obviously teams, when they're playing against the Dallas Cowboys, know that we have a defense that's very capable of making some plays. But Dan Quinn, I want him to solidify what his game plan is when it comes to the coverage of our secondary. We do know you're going to have many opportunities. We are dealing with some injuries to some guys. And now you're seeing guys, again, be a little bit more tested when it comes to the situation of looking at a player like a Deron Bland, which I still feel like he's a very capable playmaker in this league. And again, he's been very quiet over the last few weeks in the interceptions, but you haven't seen Deron Bland giving up these crazy big plays frequently. He has given up some, but I'm saying frequently. Like, teams are not just able to just kind of lock in on him completely. Post that Seattle Seahawks game, obviously, where he was threatened a little bit. But you've seen guys being able to kind of make some plays here and there. But Dan Quinn, when it comes to this secondary, the biggest thing, it's going to say, I don't want to say maybe it's nitpicking at this point, but when you're watching our secondary play, I have an issue with sometimes we're aggressive, sometimes we're not aggressive. Sometimes you look at the approach and it's a 3rd and 4 type situation, and we'll see our DBs are backed up by 6 yards off, pretty much giving up the easy pitch and catch. And I can't stand it, because at the end of the day, sometimes that's what all it takes sometimes to get some of these teams rolling in the postseason. Just letting them get easy first downs here and there, and that's sometimes where you'll see some of these big shots happen. I want to see Dan Quinn just be able to trust in his defense. At the end of the day, whether we're playing zone, whether we're playing man, whether we're playing matchup zone, whatever it is, you're going to have to be able to show that you trust these players. And I don't want to see us find ourselves in limbo in some of these situations where we could potentially put our players in position to make some aggressive type plays, and we're kind of taking them out of position. We're just playing so soft in coverage. Again, you have some guys, obviously, Stephon Gilmore. You saw him. There were not many times that he was playing soft coverage this past game, but when he got later on, I said that last drive where you see Jared Goff ends up with the touchdown pass, and they're able to kind of take control. The Detroit Lions, before we can talk about obviously the blunder, what happened with the 2-point conversions, the three 2-point conversion attempts Dan Campbell, believed his team should go for. Prior to that, you hadn't seen many just big splash plays outside of here and there for the Detroit Lions in the passing game. But Dan Quinn, to me, just played a little bit too conservative to the point that the Detroit Lions are able to just walk us down the field and be able to put the ball in the end zone. And I don't want to see things like this continue to happen because, again, it's starting to put into question Dan Quinn. We know he's very much so the leader of this defense. We know these guys will play and run through a wall for him, but at the end of the day, you have to continue to put them in the best positions. It could be nitpicking, like I said, but at the end of the day, this is the postseason. Playoffs are here. We're not here for the talking anymore. Like I said, we're not here for anything that pretty much what we're going to do, what we can do better. Show some results because at the end of the day, once you get to the postseason, it's win or go home. As simple as that. One game, not two games. You don't get any do-overs. So get yourself together offensively, defensively, and the Cowboys, we're going to be okay. And then the talk obviously has been about I guess you want to say the officiating and how bad the officiating has been. We saw in that last play, the last drive, I'm going to say, for the Detroit Lions, they have the opportunity to take the lead or just tie it with an extra point. Obviously, Dan Campbell, again, that aggressive approach he likes to take. He believes the two-point conversion was the perfect time for him to pull it out and just snatch away some victory for the Dallas Cowboys and being able to kind of send us home not happy at all. But it did not play out well because, again, to me, that was an issue when you're watching out there. You have number 70, one of the offensive linemen for the Detroit Lions, and also number 68. They come out here, Taylor Decker. They have an issue where they're trying to figure out who's going to be eligible, who's ineligible. Of course, you have to report to the officials before the play starts. It seemed the Detroit Lions were trying to cause a little confusion. They send multiple guys over to the officials, and you're not really sure who exactly is checking in. Head official Brad Allen, he gets confused. I guess he reports number 70 is the eligible. There's now folks as the eligible guy that's being reported in. Instead, it's number 68. There's confusion. The ball ends up in the end zone. A two-point conversion successful, but illegal formation because, again, it was not reported correctly. So there has been lots of questions up in limbo. Who exactly is to blame for this? Is it Dan Campbell? Is it the officials? Is it the Detroit Lions trying to be a little deceptive and just kind of hide their hands a little bit, and it ended up confusing the officials in return, which also caused a problem. But to me, at the end of the day, we could talk about bad officiating week in, week out. We're also the simple fact. We're talking about Micah Parsons. We've seen many times he's been held constantly. There are photos evidence, there's video evidence. And we're talking about Micah Parsons has not gotten a holding penalty called, again, for him in his favor in 52 quarters. You can't tell me that's not impossible. We also can go back to the Miami Dolphins game. We can go back to the Eagles game earlier this season, the one in Philly. Obviously, but again, we can go back to, like I said, go back to the Miami Dolphins game. There were many missed calls. And to me, we're watching officiating throughout the entire NFL. There's been bad referee calls and just being a bad job by the referees this entire season. Now, I'm going to say personally, not even exaggerating, this is one of the worst officiated seasons I've seen overall throughout the entire NFL. But my thing is, I will always say, I don't like when people pick and choose when they have an issue. If it's the Cowboys not getting this call, and if it happened to the Cowboys, the Detroit Lions win the game, you know many times there's going to be nothing but jokes. No one's going to care what exactly happened to the Cowboys, if they were screwed or not. At the end of the day, you have got to play the game on the field, the officials. That's why I'm so big on not us ever letting games be close enough that officiating is even an issue. And if we took care of some of our business earlier, I don't feel like the Detroit Lions were even going to be in this game to be able to make some of these later issues count against us. But the Dallas Cowboys, again, you can't worry about officiating. You can't worry about what is going to be called, what's not going to be called, because at the end of the day, officiating is going to be up in air. It's a roller coaster because some of these guys, there's not really any consequence for some of the issues that these officials have brought to the games this year. But as long as that remains the case, you're going to continue to see problems like this. But the Dallas Cowboys pulled out a win, and that's, at the end of the day, that's what we call it. There's a winner in the situation, there's a loser in the situation. The Dallas Cowboys came out on top. Final score, Dallas 20, the Detroit Lions 19. Both teams now sitting at 11-5, and the Dallas Cowboys having full control of their own destiny at this point. The San Francisco 49ers have locked up the number 1 seed, but the Cowboys can completely take the NFC East with a win against the Commanders, completely take the 2 seed in the playoffs with a win against the Washington Commanders in Week 18, and at least have one home game. And we can pray for a miracle. Maybe we'll find ourselves in a position where we can knock off a team like the 49ers. I'm not getting ahead of ourselves or anything, but I believe potentially, don't be surprised if you see a team maybe in the postseason give the 49ers some issue. I'm not banking on it, but I'm just saying we do know football is a game of inches. Anything can happen in the postseason. So the Cowboys are able to kind of put themselves in the mix for being able to be one of those teams that now you're going to say, we're now looking at a little bit different about a week or two ago, I'm going to say, because when you're talking about the Dallas Cowboys, what it felt like kind of we're starting to see ourselves maybe be stuck in that fifth seed. You now can find yourself being able to have somewhat of a home field advantage at any point in this postseason. That's big for the Dallas Cowboys because we do know this team loves to play differently at home on that turf. So lock in, continue to be better. We see Brandon Aubrey once again just being Mr. Consistent, has not missed a kick all year long. He's going to be a guy I'm going to call one of our weapons going into the postseason. Obviously, we're talking about this is an all-pro kicker now. This is a Pro Bowl kicker. He is very comfortable in what he's being asked to do week in and week out, and he deserves lots of love and lots of credit for the improvements and just the upgrade that he's brought to this team overall, having a consistent kicker in the mix that we don't really have to feel like we have to worry about too much. Dak Prescott leading the league, I believe, once again in touchdown pass, like I said, with 32. I believe also in the top 4 or 5 with about more than 4,200 passing yards. Second in QBR with a little bit over 70. Dak Prescott, this is his team. This is now what we have to focus on. Now the coaching staff, like I talked about, Mike McCarthy has got to get it all together, because if you're the head coach and the play caller, yes, you have more opportunities and you have more roles and responsibilities. But if that's what you want, that's what you're going to have to accept, and you're going to have to take full advantage of all the opportunities that you have. Continue to get better. Continue to formulate this offense to where Dak Prescott likes it to be, because as long as Dak is comfortable, the Cowboys' ceiling is, to me, I'm going to say personally, it's unlimited, as long as we can get some of these other pieces to also be on the same page. Once again, I appreciate you guys for all the support. Go ahead and like, comment, subscribe, and share. It's been a great football weekend for me. My Texas Longhorns are in the college football playoffs. The game will be tonight. So I'm going to continue to ride on this wave and this high that we're on right now as Cowboys fans. It's going to be a great final week, because there's going to be lots of entertainment and some things that's still going to be able to flip. The Dallas Cowboys have got to take care of their business. You can't be looking at any of these other games. You can't be looking ahead to the postseason. You have got to take care of business on I'm going to say at home. No, you're not at home. You're going to be on the road. You have to take care of business against an NFC East opponent in the Washington Commanders, a team that gave us problems last year. Obviously, these are going to be different circumstances, because last year in that final game, the Dallas Cowboys didn't have much to play for. It was more of a warm-up game, trying to keep your blood flowing, and the Washington Commanders came out there ready to roll last year. I feel like this is now an opportunity. We're going to see how serious the Cowboys are, because we've seen this same team in position like this sometimes, where we're able to kind of do something that we want to do, and we come out there and lay an egg. If we're a real team this year, the Dallas Cowboys will not make this a close one. I'm not even talking about a 40-point win or anything, but it should be somewhat a confident win, 14-plus type win, where you're able to just kind of choke them out as early as you can and just get yourself prepared and focused on the postseason. The Dallas Cowboys, like I said, still have some things that are able to be obtained if we just handle business and show that we are not the same team of old that kind of beats ourselves and gets ourselves in trouble. Lock in. I appreciate you guys. Like I said, appreciate you guys for sure. I hope you enjoyed your holidays. Once again, I hope you've had a great New Year's start. So far, it's the first day of January, So you guys are amazing. I appreciate all the support. We're going to continue to grow the channel. Keep liking, commenting, subscribing, sharing, and for sure, like I said, keep commenting. I want to know you guys' thoughts on the Dallas Cowboys. Some of these players, do you like? Some of the players you've seen big improvements from. Some of the players that have kind of disappointed you in the season. Let me know down below in the comment section. I appreciate you guys. And once again, as always, go Cowboys.